What's up YouTube? In this video I'm going to walk you through the process of installing this oil catch can on my 2019 Hyundai Elantra GT N-Line. This particular catch can I ordered from N75 Motorsports out of Canada. Certainly not the fanciest catch can on the market, but for a little over $100 it's actually pretty decent quality. I think it's a rebranded sort of generic can, but it'll do the trick. He will ship the can if you order from him, and I will leave a link in the description. It comes with the fittings pre-installed. I removed them because he had installed some pipe tape. It was a little sloppy, no offense, but I'm going to reinstall some pipe tape because the owner of N75 recommends having it on there. I guess maybe these don't seal very well. I don't know. They do have O-rings. I'm going to be switching out one of the fittings, which I'll explain when I start going through my installation process. But he ships it with a pretty generous length of vacuum hose, and then you also get your clamps and your check valve. So yeah, overall I'm pretty happy so far with the quality. All right, so I guess first I should give a brief explanation of why I'm installing an oil catch can in the first place, or why you might want to install one on your vehicle. It's actually a really common modification to any direct injected, especially turbocharged engine. So essentially the reason you would want to have a catch can is, and there's two spots, you may have even heard of the term dual catch cans, that you would connect a catch can. It does exactly what it sounds like it does. It catches oil. So the first and most common area that you would install one, which is where I'm going to be installing one today, is on your PCV. So essentially what's happening here is, from the factory, the PCV is designed to recirculate any of the blow-by back into your intake tract so that it can be burned off, for lack of a better term. There's also an additional spot, which would be on the intake. So underneath this engine cover, there's where the crankcase breather is, and there's simply just a vacuum line that runs from that to the intake. Same concept. The intake essentially under vacuum will suck any of that blow-by or residual oil out of the crankcase and recirculate it back into your intake tract. So the reason that it's a pretty important modification, especially if you're going to be tuning a turbocharged engine, is your engine's basically an air pump. And when you're tuning a turbocharged engine, you're typically upping the boost on the engine, which means there's going to be more pressure inside the engine in the crankcase, which means there's going to be more blow-by. In a traditional port-injected engine, when the oil is recirculated into the intake tract, there's fuel that's spraying into the ports, and that fuel is actually cleaning off, effectively cleaning the intake valves. In a direct injected engine like this one here, where the fuel is being sprayed directly into the combustion chamber, it's not being sprayed onto the back of those intake valves. So what's happening is you're getting oil that's being recirculated back into your intake tract, and over time that oil will build up on the back. And it's not just oil, there's other particles and stuff in there, but for the most part we'll call it oil for this purposes. But over time that's going to build up on the back side of your intake valves, which can cause problems, or maybe something that you have to address down the road as far as cleaning is concerned. So by putting a catch can on, you're essentially intercepting the oil that's coming out and going back in. So hopefully that's a good enough explanation of why. I know it's pretty basic explanation, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Okay, so it looks a little different now. Obviously I removed the engine cover. I would have to do that anyway for installation, but hopefully now I can give you guys a little bit better look at where we're going to be connecting the lines for the catch cans. So this is the exit for your PCV, and there's this vacuum line, and I don't know how well I can show this here, it's a little dark. But anyway, it comes down, goes back, and then unfortunately you can't see the fitting that it connects to. It's tucked underneath here inside the intake manifold. But the basic gist of it is that you're going to remove the line from here so that you can have an outlet to go into the catch can, and then from the catch can you're going to go back into this line. So most of your aftermarket oil catch cans will place, I shouldn't say most of them, but it's pretty common to have the catch can placed in this area here, mostly just because there's space for it and there's a couple mounting points. So it seems to be a pretty common spot. And then you would end up running your lines around the front of the engine over into the lines for your PCV. And that works out okay, but I like to have a little bit more of a tidier look under my engine bay. And since I've replaced the factory airbox with the K&N intake here, I've got some space kind of down in this area that I can utilize to mount the catch can in that area. That way I have a very short distance from here to here, and hopefully I can achieve some pretty clean looking vacuum hose runs and sort of maintain a little bit more of a OE look, even though there's going to be more lines and there's obviously an intake here, but that's beside the point. And I'm going to utilize these two mounting points here. I'll try to move my light around here to get a better look. All right, so I repositioned my light. Hopefully this is going to work out a little bit better. So got my catch can here just to kind of show you guys. The idea is to have it essentially suspended down in this location right here. So in order to do that, I did some measuring and some test fitting, went through one sort of prototype bracket, which was 3D printed. So this is actually printed out of PLA, so it would not have proper heat tolerances to go inside the engine bay. But this was kind of an initial mock-up just to see if I needed to make any adjustments to positioning and that sort of thing. And then this is the final product, although I have not installed this yet, so kind of taking you guys along with me on this journey to make sure this is actually going to work out. But this is printed on with ASA plastic, so it's got a much higher heat tolerance, so shouldn't have any issues with this deforming underneath the engine bay. And I believe that this location's far enough away from, you know, your exhaust manifold and your turbo where a lot of your heat's coming off of in your crankcase. So I don't really think it's going to be an issue, but just to be safe, I wanted to make sure we used a material that did have a much higher heat tolerance. So the other thing that I switched out is I ordered some additional fittings so that I could run a little bit cleaner vacuum lines. So the inlet is actually, let's see if I can show you guys better. The inlet's on this side of the catch can, and they come out at angles. So I have to have, I didn't want to have a line like snake around and then come back up into here. So what I ended up doing, and unfortunately I could not find, these threads are M16, and I couldn't find a M16 with a right angle on it that had the barb fitting. So I ended up getting a M16 to AR6 fitting, and then an AR6 swivel with our barb fitting on it. So that'll give me some room to play with as far as being able to run the line from this particular spot here up and into the PCV. So we'll see how that goes. First thing I have to do is get this thing mounted in there and make sure that it's actually going to fit correctly. Okay, so I got the catch can mounted, and I brought another light. So hopefully I can get some better shots here for you guys. But it actually worked out pretty awesome. If I were to do it again, I think I anticipated that the can would be just a tiny bit higher, but I did check and I still have plenty of room to get my hand down in there and unscrew it. And then I did slightly rotate the top of the can so that the outlet is pointing directly at where we need to hook up to go back into the intake manifold. So it's going to be a nice, clean, short run. And then, like I said before, I've got that elbow fitting to go on the inlet, so I can direct that up and around to the PCV. So that's my next step, is to get the factory line disconnected and run the new lines. So we'll see how that goes. And another tip for you that I couldn't show you before because I had a light in my other hand, and any self-respecting father is going to know this, but anytime you buckle something down, attach something, it's always a good idea to kind of give it a little bit of a wiggle. And this is really important, guys. You have to say, that's not going anywhere. So I think we're good. So just to show you where I'm at right now, I disconnected from the PCV up here. I cut a slit in the insulation that's around that hose. And then I cut the hose. Basically, I cut the 90 off of it. I'm going to be able to install the check valve, bend this down, and then connect to my catch can with a very short piece of tubing. But later on down the road, if I decide to remove the catch can and put this back to stock, I can use a male-to-male fitting here and reconnect this hose and reconnect it in the factory position again. So I've got the check valve installed. Just a couple things to note, just two things really. One, it helps to put a little motor oil on your finger and kind of lube up the barb. It'll make it go into the vacuum line a lot easier. And then make sure the arrow on your check valve is pointing in the direction of the way the air would be flowing. In this case, since this air is going back into the intake manifold, you just want to make sure the arrow is pointing in that direction. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you just kind of work it in there. It's a little tricky to get started, but once it's in there, you can kind of twist it and push and it goes in. I'll actually take this insulating material when everything's all put back together, and I'll zip tie this around, and then it'll kind of hide the check valve and keep things a little cleaner looking. Okay, so I got the catch can connected to the intake manifold. Got my trusty light again so I can try to show you guys. So see, there's the outlet on the catch can there. And then, man, you can see where the hose is coming out, or if you want to call it into the intake manifold, still has the factory insulation wrapped around it. And then underneath here, you can see where I zip tied, I had to cut a slit in that insulation to be able to peel it back. So to get it to wrap back around where the check valve is, I just zip tied it with a couple zip ties. But as you can see, I only had to use about probably 3 inches of aftermarket hose to connect over to where the check valve is, and it's pretty much a straight shot from the can straight over to the intake manifold. I have no idea whether or not that affects how well the can does its job, but I certainly like the fact that it looks very clean and there's not a bunch of hoses running all over the place. So now all that's left to do is run the hose from the PCV back down to the inlet on the catch can, and I'll be able to show you guys the finished product. All right, so I got both hoses attached. That also worked out pretty well. Clearance was good. I ended up zip tying to one of the other vacuum lines just to keep things kind of clean looking and also keep it from contacting with the radiator hose. But other than that, everything worked out really well. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the engine cover so we can get a good look at what this looks like put back together. All right, so there it is. This is my engine bay with an oil catch can installed on the PCV side. So really happy with the way it turned out. This is actually a really easy project for anyone that is thinking of attempting it themselves. I'm not going to speak for everyone, and make sure you keep this in mind, guys. If you're watching videos that are being posted on YouTube, how-to videos, I'm just a car enthusiast. I've been wrenching on cars for over 20 years, but I'm by no means a certified mechanic or an engineer or anything like that. So don't necessarily take everything that I do as gospel here. It's always a good idea to do your own research and make sure that you're doing things correctly. And if you're not confident that you can work on your car correctly or safely, just, pay a professional to do it. I'm not discouraging people from working on their cars, but just saying in some instances, this is a pretty easy, safe modification, but there are going to be times when it might be a better idea to pay someone to do the work if you're not confident with what you're doing. So, that's just my 2 cents. But I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Like I said, I'm not going to know how effective this bracket and everything is until I get some miles on it. But I couldn't bend or snap the thing. I really don't foresee any issues here. In the future, I do plan on adding a second catch can, which again, I'll probably end up doing some sort of custom mount and try to have some really nice clean lines run to that. But I will leave some links in the description for some of the stuff I used. Again, as far as this catch can goes, it's a little over $100. Daniel at N75 Motorsports is a great guy, has awesome customer service, and he's really active in the community. So I like to buy things from him just to sort of support his endeavor. But this modification can be done with really any oil catch can, and the process is going to be the same. The only thing that's going to be different is maybe, where you're going to mount it, how you're going to mount it. Most catch cans will have a slightly different mounting bracket. I'm happy to share the Fusion 360 file or the file you would need to 3D print this bracket if you would like it. Obviously, it's only going to work if you have this intake and this particular oil catch can. But if you do end up doing yours the same way I did mine, just keep in mind I'm not guaranteeing that this is the best or proper way to do it, but this is the way I wanted to do it, and I think it's pretty awesome. So let me know what you guys think, or if you have any other questions, hit me up, and we'll see you later.